Do you agree with the assertion that Niran made at the very beginning of this podcast that McLaren are back?
Do you agree with it, Niran? Because
that doesn't matter.
I think you can't say that with a serious face, really.
So I'll be real with you, yeah. As I mentioned on the live show, the McLaren hype train, it's pulled into the station. It's there. It's arrived. It's a little bit late. I'll be honest with you. It's been delayed by about 7 years.
How much are tickets?
We got them last minute, so they're pretty pricey.
Okay.
Not gonna lie. UK trains sort it out. They need to know it right. Anyway,
very LNE, are they?
It's pulled into the station. I've hopped on it, and I am heading to my final destination.
Full send.
But there's one change.
Go.
Is this just track dependent? That's the change.
Track and temp dependent.
And if I miss that change, I'm never getting to my destination.
Interesting.
And
look, again, to add context, you are a man who drove a 4KA with Lando Norris on your lap.
Yes, that did happen.
So, you know, I just want to put that out there.
I know
that
what
may be somewhat clouding the
British
judgment around the trim.
No. we said it was very unbiased that day in the car park, and I swore my allegiances to neutrality. When he was on my lap. Yeah.
Behave. Here's what I will say, Niran. I feel like I'm getting deja vu. This feels very much like Mercedes Barcelona, where all of the Mercedes populace were like, we are back.
The side pods are back.
Side pods are back on. Get them on finally. We've got a proper design philosophy. Lewis is going to win everything. We're going to get the out. And then all of a sudden, next Grand Prix, they pour water on my copium fire. So not yet, bruv. Now let's come back in a couple of months and we'll revisit and be able to get a better determination.
But I don't think even in a couple of months you're going to get an absolute read on it, because the battle behind the Red Bull is just so tight. It changes on such tiny little things that in a couple of races' time, somebody else brings an upgrade. They've then overtaken whatever upper potential McLaren had, and that rat race continues throughout the rest of the season. I just don't necessarily, because every time another team makes a big step, the caveat is, well, we'll have to see what's going to happen in a couple of races. But in a couple of races, everything else has changed again as well.
Yeah, I think what I'll say is as well, actually being like serious. The reason why it is, I think for me, a better or a bigger level of hype here than say Mercedes Catalunya, right? Is because Mercedes, as much as like relatively speaking, compared to like the last 10 years, bit disappointing right now to be feeling like, you know, they're struggling, but at the end of the day they are still fighting for podiums every race weekend, like 80% of the time. McLaren have been nowhere near that at any point this season, so it feels like it can't be totally track dependent, because you can't gain that much time on everybody just track dependent.
Austria, Red Bull Ring, it's very different track to Silverstone, very different requirements on your car. And Lando, with the upgrades, was third quickest car. McLaren was third quickest car in Austria. They've come to Silverstone, possibly second quickest car. Hard to say, obviously, race pace-wise, Mercedes was pretty good. They had a bit more work to do.
I think it would have been a slightly different story if George hadn't been caught up behind Charles.
Possibly.
Agree.
He had the tyre advantage. And
definitely quicker than Ferrari.
There's just so many things that you need to... like Austria as an example. Lando's a demon around that track. And he loves it, right?
He actually didn't have the upgrades there, so you don't actually know what the second McLaren would have done in that scenario. So,
but you do now, because...
Or do you? Because he didn't have the upgrades proper around here.
Didn't have front wing.
Not all of them.
He didn't have all of it.
Yeah, because they brought a little... And I think they've got a little bit more coming at Hungary. And then potentially, I think, like Singapore as well. That's what I heard when I went on Monday.
More to come.
Potentially Singapore, there's more to come. So, I guess seeing it perform well in Austria and Silverstone gives me more cadence to like think, okay, maybe that.
Maybe
I'll have a little sip of that.
That papaya drink. Maybe still
sweet delusion.
But if we have a scorcher in Hungary and they still do well there, then it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, you're right, because I think again, I think Austria and Silverstone temp wise, at least for the Friday and Saturday was about equal, right?
Yeah.
When the sun's out, you get a bit burnt. I do anyway. And when it's not,
gonna say.
then it's a bit drizzly and a bit like a bit sticky. That kind of temperature in both. It was quite similar. So
I'll be interested to see at Hungary because Hungary's a different.
Yeah.
Like the ambiance is very different. It's a bit more. It can be a bit more humid. Yeah. So again, that might be
very different.
That might be the old. The final piece of evidence that could facilitate your hopium.
I guess the other caveat though is that Ferrari have had a similar issue throughout the season with strongish qualifying and then dropping off in the races with poor tyre management, and they did the same thing they always do, whereas McLaren didn't.
Shez, don't you dare compare Ferrari to McLaren. Ferrari are their own. Do you know what I mean?
None of us backed that hard tyre choice for Norris.
That didn't actually make any sense.
It didn't make sense. As Niran was saying, I was like,
but Lewis and Max were both struggling on their softs and they weren't happy.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe there is something in that.
Wow, imagine if he had put on the... Mate, I don't know.
The thing is now, right, so we've got obviously Red Bull, particularly in the hands of Max. I've said this before, when Checo has a clean qualifying and he starts towards the front, he has the pace to dominate a race and have, for the first 5 races, 20-second plus gap to the next quickest non-Red Bull car, right? Yeah. He's got it in his locker when he doesn't bodge qualifying. What I'm saying now is that you've got Ferrari, Mercedes, who were the only 2 teams we gave any hope before this season started of catching Red Bull. Aston Martin shot right up at the start, and we'll talk a bit more about them later. Now McLaren seem to have joined the party with this big upgrade. Which of those 4 teams would you say, if you had to today, if you had to put money on it, which team catches Red Bull first and gives their drive? Because they've all got top quality drivers who could go toe to toe with Max. Which one of those 4? It could be. It could be McLaren.
Nora, Tommo.
I mean, I've got to say, in terms of, if you put everything together, you'd have to put your money on Mercedes. The reason being that they've got tenure. They know in that they've done it before for 8 seasons. I know what you're going to say. And in terms of who's bringing in the points consistently across both drivers, race in, race out, Hamilton and Russell both finish as high up as that car can get. Whereas there's a massive disparity between the other 2 teams. Look at Alonso and Stroll. There's no way that's going to be enough when it comes to the...
But it surely only takes one, even if it's just Alonso.
But if you're talking about constructors, when it comes...
okay, yeah, that's
I'm talking about like catching... There's a...
That's because we're talking about Red Bull. We're talking about Red Bull. So,
so regardless of whether it's both cars or one car.
Okay.
Look, can we have a proper conversation as adults here now?
Let's do it.
Because we all got burned in our picks just now. Everyone said Ferrari, and do you know what I mean? We should know better by now. And I think the same applies to Mercedes. We saw, check this out, Shez. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
What were their pit stops saying today?
Okay.
Mercedes.
3 seconds each, right?
Operational.
3.2, 3.9. How long, Shez, has this been going on for? This sort of stuff going on for? Add to that, finally, F1 is a preparation race, right? We're talking about Tommo's question, if I regurgitate it, was which one of these will get there first as far as the challenge to Red Bull. One thing that Mercedes, they're brilliant, right? 8 Constructors Championships and all that good stuff. But one thing Mercedes have proven themselves incapable of doing is moving quickly as far as fixing for their ills. Mention no names, pit stops, mention no names, dodgy strategic decisions. I can't pick Mercedes. You'd give me... I don't even rate McLaren that highly. I would take McLaren, I would take Aston, and I would take Ferrari.
Who are you saying? Who you saying?
I think in the hands of Fernando Alonso, I'm not sure I can back against Aston Martin.
I'm saying Aston as well.
I think Aston...
You know why? Right? We talked about this in the stream. Mercedes have so long, because they had such a fantastic car and such a fantastic driver in Lewis, like being able to, and say Valtteri Bottas never out of Q3, right, in that Mercedes. There's different requirements when you're not at the front, and Aston Martin / Racing Point / Force India, the personnel there understand what it takes, and they more often than not make the right calls in that. Also, all this ATR that they've had has just run out. That's not going to pay dividends until about 2-3 months from now. All this 100% ATR that they had for the first half of this year, those upgrades aren't on the car yet. When they come, they've had like about 25% more than Mercedes for the first half of this year.